So guys, I've seen a lot of you commenting, and others have also asked me about this previously, that if the Bulls miss the playoffs yet again this season, that Zach Lavine is going to leave, or others who have been saying that it's a failed season if the Bulls miss the playoffs. And because I've been seeing these comments a little more recently, as they were mentioned a few times here and there throughout the season, but have since started picking up now that we're more than halfway through the year. And so I wanted to address that in today's video and provide my perspective. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. So guys, we know ultimately the goal of every team in the game of basketball is to win a championship, whether it be for now or for building in the near future. That is the ultimate goal. And let's be honest, it's very difficult to win an NBA championship. Only one team out of 30 gets to walk away with the Larry O'Brien trophy. Some teams have never even won a title in their franchise history, and some have gone through long droughts. Just take a look at the Bulls, for example, going on year 23 without winning a championship, and actually even a finals appearance since then. The closest that we came to was in 2011 when we lost in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Miami Heat. Now for the Bulls, we're also on a bit of a playoff drought, not just winning a championship. You know, it's been hard to even reach the postseason. The Bulls haven't made it to the playoffs since 2017, before Jimmy Butler was traded. And I won't come here to debate whether the Bulls won that trade, since it ultimately netted us Zach Lavine, who turned out to be an all-star. I actually made a separate video about that in terms of revisiting that trade and whether the Bulls in fact won it. But for the purposes of this video, I want to talk about what it would mean for the Chicago Bulls if they miss the playoffs, specifically as it relates to Zach Lavine. Because let's be honest with ourselves, it's definitely a possibility that it could happen that we miss the playoffs. I mean, currently the Bulls are 10th in the East, which is good enough for the play-in tournament, but they're only one game in front from being 11th in the East. But at the same time, they're only 3 games back from being the 4 seed, so it's really up for grabs at this point in terms of the overall playoff race in the Eastern Conference. Now the other thing is, should we consider the play-in tournament as qualifying for the playoffs? Now I would say it obviously is the postseason since it's not a part of the regular season, but as far as the expectations of the players and for Zach Lavine and what he's trying to achieve, it needs to actually be making it to the top 8 and competing in an actual 7-game playoff series. So with that being said, what does it mean for Zach Lavine if the Bulls miss the playoffs yet again, and for Lavine not reaching the postseason in his 7th year in the league? Would he get fed up and want to leave the Bulls as a result, getting tired of losing and just be done with it? Well, first of all, I do think we should be clear that Zach cannot just leave in the offseason if the Bulls miss the playoffs. He is still under contract for one more season after this one. Now, he could demand a trade to where the Bulls would be forced to move him, which, sure, I guess I could see that happening, but I honestly don't think Lavine is going to do that, even if the Bulls in fact miss the playoffs, which obviously as a Bulls fan, we don't want to happen. But if we were to miss the playoffs, I don't agree with the sentiment that Zach is going to bounce as a result, and I'll explain why. First of all, I think it's important to note that if the Bulls do in fact miss the playoffs, especially if they also miss the play-in game, some of that is on Lavine. I'm not saying it's all on him, because the team has to be held accountable as a whole, including the coaching staff. But Lavine, as the best player, the #1 option, the guy who wants to be the Bulls franchise player and the guy that we build around, some of it is on him. Now I know some people aren't going to like hearing that. I mean, I've been labeled a Lavine hater before in this channel for making similar comments, but as the team's best player, some of the ownership is on him more than the other guys, just given the expectations. Now, I know some of you will say, well, Zach doesn't have enough help or talent around him to succeed. And yes, I agree with that statement. He absolutely does need more talent, and the front office does need to get him some help before Lavine starts to grow frustrated and he wants to leave Chicago. But at the same time, it's not like the Bulls have absolutely no talent outside of Lavine. I'm not saying it's championship contending type talent, but Lavine has enough talent around him to make it to the playoffs in the East. I mean, when you have a stretch forward that can shoot well from outside, but also cut to the basket in Lauri Markkanen, a 19-year-old rookie that is showing to be more and more ready to take the next step on the offensive end, you've got another capable scorer in Kobe White, and then of course you have veterans who are big contributors on the court, guys like Thaddeus Young, Garrett Temple, and Tomas Satoransky. So like I said, obviously this is not the type of talent that would help Lavine in having the team becoming a title contender, but it's enough in my view to make the playoffs. So that's one. Second, Lavine has a good thing going now in a good coach, a new front office that is already shown to be more competent than the last. It's their first year on the job, both the coach and the new management. He's going to need to be able to give it some time, even if the Bulls miss out on the playoffs this year. And by time, I mean just this 1 year. I totally get it if by next season the front office hasn't done anything to get him some help and the Bulls don't progress any further. Then yes, I would totally understand him wanting to leave when he becomes a free agent, or say even demand a trade by next year's trade deadline. Because at that point, Lavine doesn't want to waste his prime years when progress clearly is not being made in the right direction. I totally get that. But if the Bulls miss the playoffs this season, like I said, he also has to understand that some of that is on him, but also with that, knowing that this is an evaluation year for the new front office. And to be honest, I don't think most people were expecting the Bulls to make the playoffs this year. Obviously, as Bulls fans, we all felt that we could do that, but if you look at the sentiment around the league and the Vegas odds makers, the Bulls were not slated to finish in the top 8. Even myself, I had predicted that the Bulls would make the playoffs with the 8 seed before the season started, but even with that prediction, I knew that it was maybe a bit of a stretch, because at the time, the expectations were that, the Hawks would be a better and contending team for a playoff spot, same with the Wizards and even the Hornets, so it wasn't by any means made up in my mind that the Bulls would certainly make the playoffs, or anything less than that would be a disappointment. Now, all of that being said, I totally understand the rationale for why some people would think Lavine would want to leave if the Bulls don't make the playoffs this season, or I guess I should say would request a trade, because obviously he's a very competitive player, continues to get better and better, is now an all-star, and yeah, he's never made the playoffs before, and he doesn't want to keep losing. I mean, that's only natural, but I just don't feel that Lavine would be that reactionary to simply demand a trade this offseason if the Bulls don't make the playoffs, because first of all, they have been making progress. They're better than they were last year and the year before. The future potential is also promising given the young guys on this team who haven't even come close to hitting their prime. The Bulls have also had a ton of cap space and flexibility to improve their roster with a now competent front office. I mean, by him demanding a trade, he could very well be put into a worse situation on a worse team than where he is right now. He wouldn't be a free agent, so he wouldn't have control on where he goes. Now, I know some superstars essentially do when they get unhappy and they demand a trade to a particular destination, but I don't think Lavine is on that level yet to have that kind of leverage to, say, a guy like James Harden or Anthony Davis to dictate where he wants to get traded to. Now, would it be disappointing if the Bulls missed the playoffs? Yeah, absolutely. As Bulls fans, it would be. I'm sure it would be for Lavine as well, but Lavine doesn't strike me as the type of guy to just get frustrated and leave in a year that was clear to be used as an assessment year for the new front office, who had little to work with in the way of cap space this season. If there is anything we know about Lavine based on some great interviews and articles that the Bulls beat writers have put together, is that he is a very loyal guy in every aspect of his life. And he's not the type of guy that is just going to see what the next best thing is when something isn't working out. Kind of like LeBron James or Kevin Durant and some of these other stars that have just shown no loyalty whatsoever. In my view, he strikes me as the type of guy who sees this as a challenge and to stick it out through the good times and the bad. So in short, no, I don't think Lavine is going to want to leave the Bulls if they do miss the playoffs this season, or if they don't make moves to help him before the trade deadline. Next season, that's a different story if the Bulls don't make any further progress, but for this season, I would say he sticks it out for the last year of his contract, even if the Bulls miss the playoffs, which let's hope for all of our sakes that they don't, because I don't know about you guys, but I miss seeing my Bulls compete at the highest level in the postseason. That's just my perspective though. I would love to hear what you guys think. Do you think if the Bulls miss the playoffs this season, Lavine will want out of the Chicago Bulls franchise, or do you think he rides it out for the last year of his contract to see how things progress next year? Let me know in the comments. I'll also make a community poll about this topic to get your guys' thoughts. Be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.